The silence of space was endless and heavy, carrying no song, no echo, no warmth, only the endless darkness of the void, and the soft hum of a small human shuttle, drifting alone near a wide belt of shattered stone and silent asteroids that floated like ancient guardians around forgotten stars. Inside the shuttle sat a young human girl, her hands pressed against the control board, her eyes wide with worry as lights blinked red around her. She had been part of a convoy traveling through the sector, but the navigation system failed, and she was separated, her small craft, left to drift alone among rocks that held no kindness. She whispered to herself to stay calm, to breathe slow, to not let fear take over, but fear was a heavy thing in her chest, and it grew heavier with each passing second, because she knew she was alone and vulnerable, and far from any friendly signal. Her shuttle was no warship, no battle cruiser. It was only a fragile transport meant to carry her safely from one station to another, with thin walls and weaker shields. Nothing about it was built to face enemies. Then she felt it before she saw it, the sense of being watched, the sharp weight of a hunter's gaze pressing through the void, and moments later her radar confirmed what her instincts already feared. A large vessel had locked onto her position, a predator ship. It emerged from the shadows of the asteroid belt, engines glowing like the eyes of some beast from a nightmare. The hull was jagged and sharp like teeth, and the markings on its side were painted with old scars, trophies of prey it had already devoured in the past. The girl's heart pounded fast in her chest. She pressed buttons, tried to boost the weak thrusters, but her shuttle barely moved compared to the power of the predator ship that now loomed closer every second. It was not a chase, it was a cornering of prey by a patient hunter. Through the small window, she saw the alien ship shifting its angle, like a bird of prey circling above a rabbit. It knew there was no escape, no fight, only the last moment before the strike. Inside the small cabin, the girl pressed her back to the chair, shaking, whispering words only to herself. But in the corner of the shuttle, a sound answered, not of words, but of metal rattling, a cage rattling. She turned and saw her companion, the only living thing with her on this doomed craft. A small cage bolted against the side wall shook as claws scratched the bars. Inside was a honey badger, its fur dark and rough, its eyes sharp and burning even in the dim emergency light. The honey badger paced in its cage, teeth snapping at nothing, growling with a sound too fierce for its size, as if it sensed what was coming, as if it felt the enemy outside and welcomed it. The girl's lips trembled. She whispered softly, not to the void this time, but to the creature in the cage. She told it to stay calm, told it to be still, but even she knew the words were weak, because her voice cracked with fear. The predator ship was close now, so close she could see lights along its hull blinking like cold stars, lining up for an attack. A mechanical arm extended forward, long and sharp like a claw, and it reached out across the space between the two ships. The arm pierced into her shuttle with a scream of tearing metal sparks showering down as the wall broke, and the claws locked deep into the hull. The entire shuttle shuddered under the force, as if gripped in the hand of a giant. The girl held onto her seat, her small hands white against the straps, her body shaking as the predator ship pulled her shuttle closer, pulling her like a fish caught on a line. There was no escape and no rescue. She knew the predators wanted her alive, for their games, for their cruelty. The cage shook harder, the honey badger ramming its body against the bars, snarling with anger and hunger for battle. Its teeth flashed in the dim light, as if it too understood what was about to happen. It was not afraid, it was waiting. The girl felt her heart ache between terror and a strange spark of hope. She looked again at the creature, her only companion, her only defender in this cold, endless dark. Maybe it was small, maybe it was wild, but there was something in its eyes, something that told her it was not ready to surrender, not ready to die. Outside, the predator ship pulled tighter, the shuttle creaked under the strain, the claw digging deeper, cutting open another section of the hull, air hissing out as alarms screamed. Louder, the girl screamed too, but it was lost in the chaos. The predators were coming, there was no doubt about it. She could already hear the muffled sound of their tools cutting through the broken hull. She could hear the hiss of their strange voices on the other side. They were about to enter and take her. But the girl did not know that the moment they set foot inside her shuttle, the trap would no longer belong to them. The sound of tearing metal filled the shuttle. The small craft shook like a wounded animal caught in the jaws of something larger and merciless, and the girl could only grip the straps that held her to the chair as the predator ship forced its way inside the claws, had pierced through the wall, and now the noise of cutting tools and sparks spread across the cabin, filling it with sharp light and heat. The air was heavy with smoke and fear, and her heart thumped louder than the alarms around her. From behind the cracking wall came shadows stretching across the cabin floor. They moved with purpose, with hunger, with certainty. The girl held her breath, her eyes wide, as the first figure stepped through the breach. It was taller than a man, with a body wrapped in jagged armor that gleamed like bone and steel, its claws curved and dripping with some kind of black oil, and its eyes glowed a sickly yellow that pulsed as if alive with hunger. Another figure followed, then another, until 4 of them stood inside the shuttle, their heads turning, their nostrils flaring, as if they could smell her fear. Their voices hissed with cruel laughter, a sound that made the small cabin colder and sharper. The girl pressed herself back into her chair, whispering again, not to them, but to herself, telling her hands not to shake, telling her body not to scream, but her body would not listen. The leader stepped forward, armor scraping against the torn wall, its mouth stretched into something that might have been a smile, but it was twisted and cruel. It spoke in a harsh tongue, the words echoing like stone grinding against stone. The others hissed in answer and pointed toward her, their claws glinting in the dim light. They laughed again. One slapped the wall hard, as if to mock her tiny, fragile vessel. The girl wanted to hide, but there was no place to go. The cabin was too small, too exposed. She was nothing to them, only prey, trapped, cornered, and ready for whatever and they planned. Her lips trembled. She whispered, please, but her voice broke like glass, and the sound of her own weakness made her chest tighten. Then a sound came from the corner of the cabin, a sound small yet fierce, a low growl that cut through the hissing laughter of the predators. The cage rattled again, and the honey badger pressed its head against the bars, its eyes burning with fire. It scraped its claws along the floor of the cage and snarled a sound so angry, so sharp, that even the predators paused. The leader turned its glowing eyes toward the cage. It tilted its head, as if confused. Then it let out a deep laugh, pointing at the small creature. With a gesture of mockery, the others joined in their cruel voices, rising in amusement at the sight of a small beast daring to challenge them. They saw no danger, only a toy, only a meal, only a distraction. The girl felt her fear twist into something else, a strange tension rising inside her. As she looked from the honey badger to the towering aliens, she whispered softly to them, her voice shaking yet steady, in meaning, you should leave. She said, her eyes wide, her face pale, but her tone carrying a shadow of warning. The leader ignored her. It crouched low, moving closer to the cage, its claws reaching forward, its eyes glowing brighter as it leaned in to grab the small beast. The others hissed in delight, waiting to see the end of the tiny creature, waiting to laugh again at how foolish it had sounded when it dared to growl at them. The girl's breath caught her chest, heavy, her hands shaking on the straps as she tried to shout, but her voice was trapped in her throat. She could only watch the slow, cruel hand reaching for the cage, the metal bars trembling as the honey badger pushed against them, harder teeth snapping in fury, as if daring the claw to come closer. The cabin air felt tighter. The alarms still rang in the background. The walls groaned under the grip of the predator ship, but all of that vanished in the girl's mind. There was only the moment, the reaching claw, the rattling cage, and the sound of the growl that rose sharper, louder, angrier, until it became the only sound in the world. The leader's claw touched the bars, and the honey badger lunged forward. The cage shook so violently it nearly tore free of its bolts. The creature slammed itself against the door, snapping its teeth with a sound like stone cracking under pressure. The aliens jerked back slightly, surprised by the strength behind such a small frame. The leader hissed again, not in amusement now, but in irritation. The girl saw the change in its eyes. The glow flickered from mocking to cold and cruel anger. It no longer wanted to laugh. It wanted to crush the creature for daring to defy it. Its claw gripped the cage tighter, shaking it hard against the wall. Sparks fell from the bolts, holding it in place. The girl shouted no, but her voice was drowned by the sharp screech of metal as the door of the cage bent under the force. The honey badger's eyes burned brighter than ever. Its growl became a roar for something so small, and it rammed its head against the weakened door again and again until the lock snapped. With a piercing crack, the metal burst open, and the creature leapt forward, its body a blur of fur and fury, its teeth bared, its claws outstretched. The predators jerked back, their mocking laughter frozen, their eyes wide with sudden disbelief, as the small beast lunged, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with pure rage. The girl's mouth opened in shock as the honey badger flew into the center of the cabin straight toward the leader's face. For a moment everything slowed. The girl's eyes locked on the blur of fur, the leader's claw raised too late, the others beginning to move too slow, the air filled with the impossible sound of a snarl that echoed louder than any alarm, and in that single breath the fragile balance inside the shuttle shifted. The predators, who thought themselves hunters, were about to learn the truth. The girl's heart beat hard against her ribs. She clutched the straps tighter, her eyes never leaving the chaos that was about to explode. Her fear was still there, but now it mixed with something else, something she had not felt since the moment the predator's ship arrived, a spark of wild, impossible hope. The honey badger was free, the predators were unprepared, and the cabin that had been their stage for mockery was about to become their cage. And as the beast struck, its claws flashing and teeth tearing into alien armor, the girl realized with a shiver that the fight had only just begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The moment the alien hand touched the bent cage door, the air inside the shuttle changed. The honey badger burst forward with impossible speed, its body a streak of black and white fur filled with fury and defiance. Its teeth sank into the alien wrist, tearing through thick hide and jagged armor, as if neither offered any shield. The leader roared, its voice shaking the walls with pain and rage, but the creature did not let go. The girl screamed, not from fear of the beast, but from shock at its power. She had seen it angry before when it had snarled at strangers or slammed against the cage, but this was different. This was something primal, something fierce and unyielding. The small creature fought with the spirit of something far greater than its size, and the predators realized too late that this was not prey, this was a storm contained in fur and claw. The other aliens rushed forward, their claws raised, their jaws opening with hissing cries, but the honey badger was already moving. It released the leader's arm only to leap higher, its teeth snapping at a throat, its claws carving red lines through armor plates. The alien stumbled back, crashing against the broken wall, sparks bursting around it as the honey badger clung to its chest, clawing, biting, tearing, as if possessed by a rage that could not be calmed. The girl pressed herself low against the floor, her heart hammering so loud she thought the predators could hear it. She gripped the edge of her seat as the battle exploded only feet away, her breath sharp and shallow, her eyes wide with terror and awe. She wanted to look away, but she could not, because she knew this was no ordinary fight. It was survival, raw and cruel. The predators screamed to one another in their harsh tongue, trying to form a plan. But the honey badger moved too fast, its body twisting, snapping at one, then another, never slowing, never tiring. It tore through a leg, dragging an alien to the ground, then whirled to slash at another's face. Its claws left trails of dark blood across the cabin walls, and the air filled with the sound of shrieks and the metallic clash of armor breaking under fury. One alien lifted a weapon, its clawed finger tightening on the trigger, but before it could fire, the honey badger lunged at its arm. The shot went wide, striking the ceiling and burning a hole through wires that sparked down over the cabin. The weapon clattered to the floor, and the beast tore at the alien's chest until the predator fell screaming. The girl crawled across the floor toward the weapon, her hands shaking as she reached for it. The metal was hot against her palms, heavy, strange, built for alien hands, not human, but she clutched it tightly, her heart pounding. She looked at the snarling fight before her, the honey badger dripping with blood, both alien and its own, and she felt something spark inside her, not fear, not weakness, but a will she had never known. The leader roared again, its massive frame smashing against the wall as it tried to tear the honey badger free from its chest, but the creature held on, its teeth sunk into the thick hide around the throat. The sound was wet and terrible. The alien slammed its body against the wall again and again, sparks and smoke filling the air, but the beast only bit harder, only clawed deeper, as if it thrived on pain, as if nothing could break it. The girl lifted the weapon, her small hands trembling as she aimed at the nearest predator. She did not know how it worked. She did not even know if it was loaded, but her finger pressed against the trigger anyway, and a blast of searing green light shot out, striking the alien in the shoulder. The predator staggered back, howling, clutching at the wound as smoke rose from the burned flesh. Her chest heaved, her breath sharp with disbelief. She had fired a weapon. She had hurt one of them. She was not powerless anymore. The honey badger snarled again, leaping from the chest of the wounded leader to tear into the alien. She had just shot. Together they fought like storm and fire, one human, one beast, united by the desperate need to live. The cabin was chaos. The alarm screamed, the walls shook under the grip of the predator's ship. The floor was slick with alien blood, and sparks rained from broken wires overhead, but in that chaos the predators faltered, their mocking confidence gone, replaced by confusion and fear. They had thought this was easy prey, a girl alone in a shuttle with a small animal, but now they saw the truth, and it chilled even their cold hearts. The girl shouted a raw sound, not words, just defiance. As she fired again, the blast struck another alien in the leg, dropping it to the ground, and the honey badger was upon it in a heartbeat, tearing through armor, until the shrieks went silent. She turned her eyes to the leader, its glowing gaze still fierce, but now filled with doubt. It bared its teeth and hissed, but its body shook under the blood pouring from its chest. The honey badger growled low, crouching ready to strike again. The leader raised its claws high as if to end the fight in one crushing blow, but the beast lunged faster than the eye could follow, claws slashing across the throat. The alien stumbled backward, crashing against the wall, clutching at the wound as dark blood poured out thick and heavy. The girl tightened her grip on the weapon, her body trembling not from fear, but from a strange wild energy that filled her veins. She looked at the predators, still standing, their eyes darting between her and the creature that now crouched in a pool of blood, its fur wet, its teeth dripping, its growl echoing through the cabin. They had numbers still, but their courage was breaking. She took a step forward, her voice shaking, but clear. Leave, she said, the word cutting through the chaos like a blade. The predators hissed, uncertain for the first time, their glowing eyes filled with hesitation. But hesitation was not enough. The honey badger leapt again, this time into the center of them, tearing claws, flashing teeth, snapping. The predators screamed and swung their claws, but the beast did not stop. It latched onto one, tearing through muscle and bone before turning to another. The cabin filled with shrieks that echoed louder than any alarm, and the girl watched her companion fight with a fury no creature should hold. Her weapon trembled in her hands. She aimed again, fired again. Another blast of green light, and another predator fell. The honey badger roared in triumph, a sound so raw, so powerful, that even the leader stumbled back, its courage finally cracking. The girl felt her chest burn with something new, something alive. She was not prey anymore. She was not weak anymore. The predators had come to take her, but they had found something else, something they could not crush, something they could not own. She whispered through trembling lips, not to the predators, but to herself and to the beast, we will live, and the words fell true. But the fight was not over, because outside the predator ship shook with energy, as more claws extended, ready to send more intruders inside, ready to finish what the first wave had failed to do. The girl saw the shadows of more figures moving through the breach, their glowing eyes like fire in the dark. She held her weapon tighter, her honey badger growled louder. The battle was only beginning, and the predators would learn that the smallest storm can still tear down the tallest mountain. The breach widened with a shriek of torn metal, and more shadows poured into the ruined shuttle. Tall armored figures stepping through smoke and sparks, their glowing eyes searching with hunger and rage. The first wave had fallen, screaming to the claws and teeth of the honey badger, yet the second wave was larger, stronger, filled with fury at the shame of their fallen kind. The small cabin seemed to shrink under their weight, and the girl pressed herself tighter against the wall, clutching the alien weapon in her trembling hands while her chest burned with fear and fire. The honey badger stood in the center of the cabin, blood soaking its fur, both its own and the predators. It had already torn apart. Its eyes gleamed like coals. Its growl was low and heavy, and its claws dripped with dark liquid. It should have been tired, broken from wounds that would have ended any other creature. Yet it did not tremble. It did not slow. It lowered its body, ready to leap again, and the predators hesitated for a breath, unable to believe the defiance of something so small. The girl whispered no words this time, only a sound of breath, sharp and quick. Her gaze locked on the beast that had become her shield, her fury, her hope. She could barely believe it was real. She could barely believe she was alive at all, yet the reality was painted in blood across the floor, and in the trembling fear she saw in the glowing eyes of the predators. One of them roared at last, breaking the silence, and charged forward, claws raised for the kill. The honey badger moved before the sound had faded. It slammed into the towering figure, its teeth finding the gap between armor plates, tearing flesh in a spray of black blood. The predator screamed, thrashing, trying to shake the beast off, but it clung tight, claws digging deeper, drawing new cries that echoed off the shuttle walls. Another predator lunged at the girl, swinging a weapon shaped like a jagged blade. She raised the alien gun, hand shaking, but she pulled the trigger. A blast of green fire tore through the air, striking the chest of the attacker. It stumbled back, With a roar smoke rising from the burned wound, the girl gasped in shock at her own strike, but she did not lower the weapon. She fired again and again until the creature collapsed at her feet, twitching as smoke curled from its armor. The battle raged like fire through dry grass. Predators, screaming claws, slashing sparks, falling wires, snapping. The shuttle shook under the weight of chaos. The honey badger fought with no hesitation, no fear, ripping into legs, tearing at throats, even as claws raked its body, leaving deep wounds across its sides. Every wound only seemed to fuel its rage, each drop of blood making it faster, sharper, more furious. It was as if pain was its strength, as if the beast had been born to fight, until there was nothing left standing. The girl crawled across the floor, grabbing another fallen weapon. She rose to her knees, aiming at the glowing eyes that filled the smoke. She fired the recoil, shaking her arms, but she held on the blasts, carving holes into armor, sending bodies crashing to the floor. She had never killed before, never fought before, but now there was no room for thought, only survival, and she felt the fear in her veins twist into something else, something alive, that burned like the same fire she saw in her beast. The predators had thought they were hunters, but now they stumbled under the fury of prey that refused to kneel. One after another fell, their blood pooling across the cabin walls, their roars fading into silence. The girl screamed as she fired again, her voice raw with terror and fury. The honey badger slammed into another predator, dragging it to the floor, tearing its chest open with a spray of sparks. As its armor split, the air was thick with the smell of iron, smoke, and fire, and still the fight did not end. One predator, larger than the rest, stepped forward, its armor glowing brighter, its claws longer. It roared a sound that shook the shuttle. The leader of the second wave, the strongest of them all, the girl froze as it towered over her, eyes burning like suns. But the honey badger did not hesitate. It leapt, claws reaching, teeth snapping against the armored chest. The giant slammed its fist down, striking the beast into the floor. The impact shook the cabin. The girl screamed, thinking it was finished, but the honey badger rose again, blood dripping from its mouth, and snarled louder than before. The giant struck again, another crushing blow that would have ended any other creature, but the honey badger bit into its arm, twisting, clawing, tearing, refusing to release. The predator screamed in rage, smashing the beast against the wall again and again, sparks showering over them. The girl lifted her weapon, firing at the giant's side. The blasts scorched its armor, but it did not fall. It roared and turned its burning eyes toward her, its claws rising, ready to strike. She could not move. She could only raise the weapon higher, her hands shaking, tears burning in her eyes. She pulled the trigger, and the blast struck, its face burning away, one glowing eye. The creature howled in pain, stumbling back, and in that moment the honey badger leapt again, its teeth sinking into the exposed wound, its claws raking deep across the throat. The predator roared once more before collapsing to the floor, thrashing, then finally lying still. The cabin shook with its fall and then grew silent. The girl gasped for air, her body trembling, her eyes locked on the beast, now standing atop the fallen giant, its chest heaving, its eyes still burning with fury, though its body was torn and bleeding. She felt her chest ache, not with fear, but with awe at the impossible fight she had just witnessed. She clutched the weapon tighter, knowing that without it, without the beast, without the strange unspoken bond, she would already be gone. Yet the silence did not last outside. The predator's ship loomed still, its claws gripping the shuttle like a toy, its lights flashing as more shadows moved inside the breach. The fight was not over, not yet. The girl swallowed hard, forcing herself to stand, forcing her shaking legs to move. She stepped beside the honey badger, her weapon raised, her chest filled with terror, but also with fire. The beast looked at her, eyes burning, as if it understood, as if it shared the same promise. They would not bow, they would not break, they would fight together until nothing was left. And as more predators poured into the shuttle, filling the air with hissing roars, the girl whispered only one word through her trembling lips: survive. The cabin was shaking, the walls screamed with alarms, and sparks fell like burning rain, while the predators poured through the torn hull, their glowing eyes filled with fury at the sight of their fallen kind. The girl stood with the alien weapon clutched in her trembling hands, her chest rising and falling in sharp breaths, while beside her the honey badger crouched low, its body torn and bloody, yet its eyes still burned with a fire that refused to fade. The air was heavy with smoke, blood, and terror. But deeper than that there was something else, a strange weight that felt like destiny pressing down on the fragile shuttle. The predators surged forward, their claws flashing, their armor rattling with each step, They were larger, stronger, filled with rage and hunger. Yet even as they came, the honey badger roared a sound so raw and sharp that it echoed louder than the alarms. Its fur bristled, its teeth bared, and it leapt into the first attacker, claws tearing across a leg, pulling the predator to the floor. In a spray of black blood, the others hissed in anger, slashing with weapons and claws, but the beast was faster moving, like fire through dry wood, never stopping, never slowing. The girl raised the weapon, her hand shaking, but she forced herself to steady her aim. She squeezed the trigger, and a blast of green fire tore through the air, striking the chest of another predator. It screamed and staggered back, its armor smoking. She fired again and again, until the creature dropped to the ground, twitching. The recoil shook her body, but she did not lower the weapon. Her fear had become something else, a fierce determination that burned hotter with each shot. The cabin became chaos. Predators screaming, beasts snarling, weapons flashing, blood spraying across the walls. The honey badger tore through them like a storm, claws raking throats, teeth breaking bone. Even when claws slashed deep into its body, it did not falter. It only roared louder, its rage growing stronger with every wound, as if pain itself gave it strength. The girl saw it fighting, and her chest ached with awe. She had never believed anything could fight like that, never believed a small creature could hold back monsters. But the predators were many, and the space was tight. One of them rushed, her blade raised. She stumbled back, firing the weapon, but the blast missed, burning a hole through the wall. The predator lunged, claws reaching for her throat. She screamed, but the honey badger leapt across the cabin, slamming into its side. The two crashed into the floor, rolling in a blur of fur and armor, until the beast ripped into its throat with a roar. The girl pressed her back to the wall, her breath ragged, her body trembling. As she looked around the cabin, it was covered in blood and smoke, the floor slick with dark liquid wires dangling, sparks raining down. But what struck her most was the sight of the predators, their glowing eyes filled with something she had not seen before. Hesitation, fear. They had thought this fight would be easy. They had thought she was only prey, but now they saw the truth, and it broke the cruel confidence in their gaze. The leader of the group roared loud enough to shake the walls, its towering frame stepping forward, claws dripping with fresh blood. It pointed toward the girl and the beast, its command sharp and cruel, and the predators obeyed, rushing again into the fight. But the honey badger did not retreat. It roared louder than the leader itself and charged, tearing into the first body with such fury that blood sprayed across the cabin like rain. The girl fired again, striking one in the side, then another in the leg. The blasts filled the air with heat and smoke, and for the first time, she felt something different inside her. She was no longer just surviving. She was fighting. She was part of this battle. Her hands no longer shook, her eyes no longer blurred with tears. Her voice rose in a raw scream as she fired again and again until another predator fell. The leader snarled and swung a massive claw at the honey badger, slamming it against the wall, sparks bursting where metal bent. The girl cried out, thinking it was finished, but the beast rose again, blood dripping from its mouth, its eyes burning hotter than before. It leapt at the leader, its teeth sinking into the armored throat. The predator roared, thrashing, smashing against the wall, trying to tear the creature away, but the honey badger clung tight, claws digging deeper, teeth tearing harder. The leader's roar became a gurgle as dark blood poured down its chest. The girl saw it. She saw the leader stumble, saw its glowing eyes flicker with fading strength. She raised the weapon, aimed, and fired. The blast struck the side of its head, burning through armor and flesh. The predator screamed one last time before collapsing to the floor. The honey badger still locked on until the body stopped moving. Then it released with a final growl, standing atop the fallen giant chest, heaving, blood covering its fur, yet its eyes still blazing. The cabin grew quiet for a breath. The predators, hesitating, their leader fallen, their numbers cut down by something they could not understand, their glowing eyes filled with doubt. The girl stepped forward, her weapon raised, her voice trembling yet sharp. Leave, she said the word, cutting through the smoke and silence like a blade. But outside, the predator's ship pulsed with light, its claws gripping the shuttle tighter, its engines roaring. The girl looked through the cracked window and saw energy building along its sides, weapons charging for a final strike. They were not retreating, they were preparing to destroy the shuttle entirely, to end her, to end the beast, to erase the shame of their defeat. The alarms screamed louder, red lights flashing across the cabin. The systems sparked warning of collapse. The girl staggered, her breath sharp, her chest heavy. She knew she had only moments before the entire shuttle was torn apart. She looked at the honey badger. It stood bloody, but unbroken, eyes locked on her, as if waiting for her command, waiting for her will. Her heart burned with fear, but also with fire. She stepped forward, gripping the weapon tighter, her voice soft but steady. "We are not finished," she whispered to herself, to the beast, to the void around them. "We are not prey, we are alive." The honey badger growled low, as if answering the promise, as if it too understood that even with death pressing close, even with walls breaking and weapons charging, they would not bow, they would fight until the end together. The girl turned her eyes back to the window, the glow of the predator ship brighter, now energy swelling, ready to release and destroy everything in one burning flash. She held her breath, her weapon raised, her body trembling with defiance. The honey badger crouched beside her, claws dripping, ready to leap once more. And in that final moment before fire consumed them all, the girl realized the truth, that this fight was not just survival, it was the turning point. It was the moment the predators would learn what it meant to corner humanity, what it meant to face even the smallest beast that fought beside them. The shuttle screamed under the grip of the predator's ship, its metal walls bending, its alarms crying out with shrill voices as energy gathered outside, ready to fire and erase everything within a breath. The girl felt the weight of that doom pressing on her chest, her small hands clutching the alien weapon so tightly her knuckles were white, while her eyes burned with a strange fire she had never known before. Beside her, the honey badger crouched, its body torn and dripping, yet its spirit alive, eyes glowing like embers in the dark. It growled low and steady, a sound that cut through the chaos like the drumbeat of war. The predator still inside the shuttle hissed and circled, their glowing eyes wide with hunger, yet trembling with doubt. They had watched their leader fall, they had felt the fury of the beast, they had seen the girl stand with a weapon in her hands and fire without hesitation, but they had no choice. Their ship demanded victory, their kind demanded blood. They rushed forward, their claws flashing as the cabin filled with smoke and sparks. The honey badger moved first, leaping into them with claws raking, teeth snapping. It tore into a leg, ripping through armor before twisting to sink its teeth into an arm. The predator screamed, stumbling backward as dark blood sprayed across the cabin. The girl raised her weapon, firing at another. The blast burned through its chest, sending it crashing against the wall. With a cry, her arms shook with the recoil, but she gritted her teeth and fired again, hitting another in the side, sending it howling to the ground. The battle was chaos, the small cabin lit with bursts of fire and arcs of sparks, the walls dripping with blood and broken wires, the air heavy with smoke. The girl coughed, her throat raw, her vision blurred, but she did not stop. She screamed as she fired again, striking another predator in the head, the blast burning away its glowing eyes. As it collapsed at her feet, the honey badger roared, a sound so raw and fierce that it shook her bones. It moved like a storm, ripping through the towering forms faster than they could strike. Each wound it took only made it angrier, stronger. But outside, the predator ship was ready, its cannons glowing brighter, the energy humming through the void. The girl looked through the cracked window, saw the light building, saw her end waiting. She felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to bow. She turned to the shuttle controls, sparks flying across the panels, her fingers moving desperately, pulling levers, smashing keys. The systems were failing, but she fought them with every ounce of strength, as if her will alone could hold the dying ship together. The honey badger fought at her side, its roars filling the cabin with fury. One predator slashed deep across its back, but instead of falling, it spun with a snarl, biting through the attacker's throat, tearing until the predator went silent. The beast staggered, blood dripping, yet it shook itself and growled louder, as if pain itself was fuel. The girl saw it, and her chest ached with awe. This was no animal, this was defiance made flesh. The remaining predators hesitated again, their eyes darting to the glowing cannons outside. Their orders were clear, but their courage was broken. They hissed in anger and fear. One stepped forward, then stepped back, as the honey badger bared its teeth, dripping with blood. The girl raised her weapon, her voice trembling, but strong. Leave. She shouted the word, sharp, cutting through the smoke and silence. Yet before any answer came, the predator ship fired not at them, but at the asteroid belt around them. Beams of burning light slicing through the rock, sending explosions of stone and fire across the void. The shockwaves slammed against the shuttle, tossing it like a leaf. The girl screamed, gripping the console, as the walls groaned, threatening to split. The honey badger was thrown against the floor, but rose again, shaking off sparks and blood, its growl undying. The asteroid shattered, pieces of stone smashing into the predator ship, tearing holes into its armor. The girl blinked in shock. The predators had miscalculated their strike, had woken the fury of the belt around them, the void filled with flying debris crashing against both ships. The Predator vessel shook under the storm, its lights flickering, its grip on the shuttle faltering. The girl felt the moment like a breath of hope. She slammed a lever, pulling the shuttle engines to life. The weak thrusters roared, shaking sparks through the cabin, but they pushed the shuttle forward, straining against the claws that still held it. The metal screamed, but the grip loosened. The Predator ship struggling against the storm of rocks. One claw snapped, then another. The shuttle lurched free, spinning wildly through the belt as the girl cried out, holding the controls with desperate strength. The Predator still inside roared in fury, slashing at her, but the honey badger leapt at them, its teeth tearing into the closest throat, dragging it down. The girl fired again, her shot burning through another Predator's chest, smoke filling the cabin. The ship spun between burning stones, debris crashing across the hull, alarms wailing louder than ever. But they were alive, they were moving, they were free from the grip of the Predator vessel. The Predator ship struggled behind them, its cannons firing wildly, but the storm of asteroids was too strong. Chunks of stone slammed into its sides, fire bursting across its hull. The girl watched through the cracked window, eyes wide as explosions rippled across the massive vessel. It roared with engines, but the rocks crushed into it again and again until light burst from its core, a burning flash that lit the void. The Predators inside the shuttle froze, their glowing eyes wide as they felt the collapse of their ship. Their courage finally breaking, they turned to flee toward the breach. But the honey badger would not allow it. It roared and leapt, tearing into one, dragging it back, its claws raking its armor, until silence fell. The girl fired at the last, striking it in the back, the blast sending it crashing against the wall, unmoving. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the alarms and the girl's ragged breath. The honey badger stood in the center of the floor, covered in blood, its chest heaving, its eyes still glowing. It turned to her, its gaze sharp and alive. She staggered forward, falling to her knees. Beside it, tears falling down her face, she whispered through trembling lips, "We are alive because of you." The shuttle spun through the asteroid belt, battered and burning, but free. The Predator ship was gone, destroyed by its own arrogance. The Predators who had boarded were silent, bodies strewn across the cabin. The girl held the beast close, her hands shaking as she felt its heartbeat steady beneath the blood. She whispered again, not just to it, but to the stars around her, "They will know. They will all know. Never corner a human, never touch your beast." The honey badger growled low, as if agreeing, as if promising that the fire of their fight would be remembered. The girl closed her eyes, her tears hot, her chest heavy with exhaustion, but deep inside her burned something new, not just survival, not just fear, but strength of fire that would carry through the stars. And in the endless silence of space, with the ruins of the Predator ship drifting behind them, the legend of the impossible fight was born, a legend of a girl and her beast, a legend that would spread through the dark and whisper to every Predator that some prey will fight back. The shuttle drifted through the broken belt of asteroids, its hull scarred and torn, its alarms still crying, though weaker. Now the girl sat slumped against the control chair, her body trembling, her breath shallow, her eyes red with exhaustion. The weapon still heavy in her lap, her fingers sticky with alien blood. She looked out the cracked window into the endless dark and saw only silence, fragments of stone drifting in the void, glowing faintly with the fire of what had once been a Predator ship. Beside her, the honey badger lay, its chest rising and falling slowly, its fur matted with blood, both black and red, its claws dull with gore, yet its eyes still burned with a dim ember that refused to fade. It breathed with a low rumble, like a growl even in rest, and the girl reached out her trembling hand to touch its side, whispering softly to it, "You saved me, you saved us both." The cabin smelled of smoke and iron, the walls painted with streaks of dark stains. The bodies of the Predators lay scattered, some half-burned, some torn open, their glowing eyes now empty, their towering forms reduced to silent carcasses. In the wreckage, the girl could not believe she was still alive. She could not believe this small shuttle, floating broken through the void, still carried breath, still carried a heart that beat. She closed her eyes, letting the tears slip down her face, not of fear now, but of something else, of awe, of defiance, of survival. Her hand shook as she turned back to the controls. Sparks still fell from broken wires. The screens blinked with dying light, warning of collapse, of failing systems. Yet she pressed buttons, moved levers, forced the machine to respond even as it coughed and screamed. She whispered to it, "Please stay alive with me, please. One more time, just a little longer." The shuttle groaned, as if it heard her, as if it too did not want to die. The honey badger stirred its eyes, opening again, its body shifting with a snarl. Though no enemy remained, it looked at her, its gaze sharp, alive, fierce, even through the pain. She met its eyes, and felt something pass between them, an unspoken bond, a promise that they were not finished, that together they would not bow, they would not fade into the silence of the stars. Outside, the asteroids drifted in endless patterns, some glowing from fire, some shattered into dust. The Predator ship was no more, its arrogance crushed by stone, and fury, its hunters dead at her feet. But she knew this was not the end. She knew the Predators had more ships, more claws, more hunger. Yet she also knew that word would spread, that whispers would travel faster than light across the dark corridors of the galaxy. Whispers of a girl and her beast, whispers of a fight that should have been impossible, yet burned its truth into the void. She leaned her head back against the chair, eyes half closing, exhaustion pulling at her body. But she forced herself to stay awake, forced herself to keep watching the controls, to keep searching for signals. Her fingers moved across the console, weak but steady, until at last she heard it, a faint crackle of sound, a human voice, broken by static, but real. Her breath caught. She cried out into the dark, sending her own voice into the channel, begging for response. The voice came again, clearer, now sharp with shock and relief. They had found her. The convoy had turned back, searching for the lost signal, searching for the girl, thought gone to the void. She cried again, tears streaming down her face, as she sent her voice back, telling them she was alive, telling them she was not alone, telling them of the beast that saved her. The honey badger rose weakly to its feet, standing in the center of the cabin, blood dripping from its fur. It growled low, as if warning the silent predators around it that even in death they were still beneath it. Then it turned its eyes back to her, as if it knew the fight was done, as if it knew the story would live longer than either of them. The girl listened as the convoy's signal grew stronger, the promise of rescue filling the air around her. Yet in her heart she felt something deeper. She felt that she had changed, that she had been forged in fire and blood. She was not prey anymore. She was not fragile anymore. She was alive. She had fought, and she had survived, and the galaxy would never forget. She looked once more at the shattered remains of the Predator ship outside, drifting in silence, its broken pieces scattering among the asteroids like ashes. She whispered softly into the void, "This is what happens when you corner us. This is what happens when you mistake us for weak." The honey badger growled again, its body lowering to rest, yet its eyes still sharp even in exhaustion, as if daring the stars themselves to test it again. The girl smiled faintly through her tears, her hand resting gently on its back. She whispered, "Thank you," and the words carried more weight than any she had ever spoken, because without it there would be no breath left in her lungs, no heart left to beat. The shuttle lights flickered, the systems failing, yet the convoy signal grew louder, their voices reaching her, telling her to hold on, telling her they were close. She closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her, her chest heaving with relief, her mind drifting with exhaustion. Yet deep inside her the fire still burned, the fire of defiance, the fire of survival. And as the human convoy ships appeared in the distance, lights cutting through the dark like dawn, the girl knew this was not just her survival. This was the beginning of something larger, a story that would spread through every corridor of space, through every predator that dared to hunt humanity, a warning carved in blood and fire. Never corner a human, never touch her beast, never forget the fight that turned hunters into prey. The honey badger's final growl echoed in the cabin, sharp, steady, alive, as the human ships closed in to take them home, and in that growl the girl heard the promise of survival, carried forever through the stars.